That night, Daniel gently handed Leah a pale blue pill with a warm glass of water. "Take this, sweetheart. It'll help you sleep tonight." She put the pill in her mouth. Leah Morgan, 35 years old, lives in a cozy, upscale apartment in Seattle. She is a highly capable woman who works as a cybersecurity analyst for a major financial corporation. At work, Leah is known for her cool head, sharp logical thinking, and meticulous attention to detail. However, fate often plays cruel tricks. The strong, resilient woman in the professional world can sometimes be the most vulnerable at home. Leah yearns for love and believes she has found that safe harbor. The man in her life is Daniel Ward, 37 years old. To those around them, Daniel is the epitome of the perfect husband. He runs a health technology company, has a gentle and refined appearance, and wears a constant, easygoing smile. Neighbors adore Daniel for his thoughtful and attentive nature. 2 years have passed since their wedding, and Leah's life has flowed as peacefully as a beautiful dream. Every morning, Daniel always rises a little earlier than Leah to prepare breakfast. He never forgets to remind her to take care of her health. On some evenings, when Leah is working late at her computer, Daniel quietly approaches, places a glass of warm water on her desk, and says in his warm, steady voice, "Leah, your work is important, but you are more important. I want you to stay healthy so we can have a long life together." Hearing those words, Leah's heart melts. She looks at her husband with gratitude and contentment, often telling herself, "I am so lucky. In this chaotic world, where else could I find a man as kind and unconditionally loving as Daniel?" Daniel's care is meticulous, extending to her sleep and every supplement she takes. He always explains that because he works in the health industry, he knows what is best for her. Leah trusts him completely, a trust as innocent and sincere as a traveler in the dark relying on the only light to guide them. But Leah has no idea that behind that perfect facade, behind those honeyed words, lies a horrifying truth. Daniel Ward is not simply a loving husband. He is a master actor performing a carefully scripted play, one written long before they ever walked down the aisle. This beautiful picture of marriage is in reality just a glamorous shell concealing a dark conspiracy that is slowly swallowing Leah's life whole. It all began with the pale blue pills Daniel gave Leah each day. "These are the latest immune-boosting supplements developed by my company," Daniel would say, gently placing the pill in his wife's hand along with a glass of warm water. "Take it, sweetheart. You've been working so hard lately. I don't want you to get sick." Leah took it without the slightest suspicion. To her, it was love. It was care. But ironically, the more she took that health supplement, the more her own health spiraled uncontrollably downhill. First came the unexplained exhaustion. A once energetic woman who used to hike on weekends now found even getting out of bed in the morning a burden. But even more frightening than the physical fatigue were the gaps appearing in her memory. Some mornings, Leah woke up with a dizzy, heavy head. She was startled to find the pajamas she was wearing completely different from what she had on the night before. Confused, she asked her husband, only to receive Daniel's calm, eerily unsettling smile. "You were sleepwalking again last night, Leah. You were drenched in sweat, so I changed your clothes for you. Don't you remember?" Leah tried to search her memory, but all she found was a shapeless, murky fog. Then, strange bruises began appearing on her arms and thighs, deep, painful, bluish-black marks. When she frantically showed them to Daniel, he sighed and stroked her hair with feigned sympathy. "My love, yesterday you bumped into the edge of the table while getting water. I helped you up. How could you forget already?" Daniel's voice was steady, smooth, and convincing. He showed no trace of unease. His gaze held only a veneer of patient understanding. It was precisely that attitude that trapped Leah in a terrifying psychological maze. Inside, Leah began to tear herself apart. As a data analyst, she was used to finding logic in every problem, but now she couldn't make sense of herself. She started blaming herself. She assumed the pressure from her high-stakes financial security projects was taking a toll on her nerves. Maybe I'm really going crazy, Leah thought to herself, guilt washing over her. Daniel is so good to me, takes such good care of me, and here I am acting scatterbrained, forgetting things, making him worry. I must be weak. Daniel, like a seasoned predator, had caught the scent of Leah's self-doubt. He didn't miss the chance to drive the knife deeper into her self-esteem. One evening at dinner, when Leah timidly voiced her fears about her memory, Daniel took her hand, looked straight into her eyes, and said, "You should trust me, Leah. Your mind can sometimes play tricks on you. Let me handle everything. You just need to rest." Those words sounded like comfort, but in reality, they stripped away Leah's confidence. He wanted her to believe she was losing control, that he was her only anchor. Gradually, Leah retreated into herself, accepting Daniel's, quote, care as inevitable, unaware that she was sinking deeper into a living nightmare. Blind trust is like a blindfold, but a woman's intuition is a weapon too sharp to be hidden forever. Despite Daniel's meticulous efforts to craft a perfect script to manipulate his wife's mind, he forgot one crucial fact. Leah Morgan isn't just a vulnerable wife. She's a top cybersecurity expert. The turning point came in the quiet of a late night when a dry, burning thirst woke Leah at 3 a.m. The house was silent, but a sliver of light escaping from under Daniel's study door caught her attention. Tiptoeing closer, she intended to gently remind her husband to come to bed. But her hand froze on the doorknob. Inside, she heard Daniel's voice, but not the warm, affectionate tone she knew. His voice was cold, sharp, and unnervingly detached. "She needs to go deeper. The current dosage isn't enough to ensure the full extraction window. We have a critical trial scheduled for this weekend. There can be no mistakes." Leah stood rooted to the spot, her breath catching in her chest. Who was she? Extraction of what? And what trial? Questions swirled in her mind, followed by a vague but chilling dread that crept down her spine. The next morning, after Daniel left, Leah quietly returned to her husband's study. She was stunned to find the door locked tight with a heavy padlock, something that had never happened in their 2 years of marriage. Daniel had always said, "Home is a place without secrets." Yet now, that room had become a forbidden zone. Her suspicion, like a tiny spark hitting dry tinder, ignited fiercely. Her professional instincts kicked in. She rushed to her own desk and fired up her personal laptop. With trembling but determined hands, she began a deep scan of her entire system. The results that flashed on the screen left Leah speechless. A sophisticated spyware, a keylogger designed to record every keystroke, was embedded deep in her work laptop's operating system. It was perfectly cloaked, detectable only by a high-level expert. Even more horrifying, Leah began cross-referencing her work schedule with her episodes of memory loss. She was stunned to discover a chilling coincidence. The days she blacked out, the nights she was in a deep sleep, all aligned perfectly with the times she was handling the most sensitive data for major U.S. financial corporations. This was no longer random. It wasn't stress, and it wasn't her own weakness. Leah stared at the screen, tears streaming down her face, but her gaze grew steady. She realized these sleep spells weren't accidents. They were calculated links in a chain, part of a conspiracy far larger than she could imagine.
The husband she shared her bed with had in reality turned her into a pawn in his hands.
The pain of betrayal can drown a woman, but it can also forge her into something sharper than ever before. Leah Morgan chose the latter. She wiped away her tears and pushed her weakness aside. She understood that confronting Daniel head-on right now would be suicide. Just 2 miniature cameras, the type used in covert security operations, each no larger than a button and capable of recording in darkness. Taking advantage of Daniel's morning run, she quickly installed them. The first was cleverly hidden behind a thick book on the bedroom shelf, aimed directly at their bed. The second, Leah daringly took down to the basement, the place Daniel always claimed he was renovating for a home gym. The basement door was usually locked, but today she had swiftly copied the spare key from the ring Daniel had left carelessly on the kitchen table. But the real battle was fought every evening at the dinner table. It was the most nerve-wracking performance of her life. That night, Daniel, as usual, handed her the pale blue pill with a glass of water. He looked at her, his eyes overflowing with fake tenderness. "Take it, sweetheart, so you'll sleep better tonight." Leah's heart pounded violently in her chest, as if trying to break free, but her face remained astonishingly calm. She took the pill and gave a slight smile. "Thank you, Daniel. You're so thoughtful." She placed the pill in her mouth and took a large sip of water. Daniel watched closely as she swallowed, then smiled with satisfaction. But he didn't know that Leah had skillfully tucked the pill under her tongue. The moment he turned his back to put the glass away, she quickly spat it into a tissue and concealed it in her pocket. From that night on, Leah began living a double life. By day, she was the docile, fragile wife. By night, she was a detective in her own home. She bought a small notebook, meticulously hidden under the lining of her car's floor mat. In it, she recorded every detail, what Daniel said that day, his comings and goings, and most importantly, her body's reactions now that she had stopped taking the pills. Her mind gradually cleared. The episodes of deep drugged sleep vanished, replaced by the sharp alertness she'd once known. Inside, Leah was now a battlefield of turmoil. Every night, lying beside Daniel, listening to his steady breathing, she shuddered with revulsion. The man sharing her pillow, to whom she had once pledged her life, was a calculating conspirator, deliberately deceiving her. She told herself, "Stay sharp, Leah. You're not just fighting for yourself. You might be a pawn in a massive technological crime, and the mastermind is your own husband." For the first time in her life, she felt the full chilling weight of terror, realizing she could be a tool in a monumental scheme, orchestrated by the one person she'd trusted most.
On a Saturday afternoon, when Daniel announced he had to go to the factory, Leah knew her moment had come. The house was empty and silent. With a heart pounding as if it would burst, Leah extracted the data from the 2 tiny cameras she had risked everything to install. What appeared on her computer screen wasn't just evidence of ordinary infidelity or lies. It was a horror film starring herself. The video from the bedroom was the first thing that left Leah speechless. On the screen, she saw herself lying in a deep, drugged sleep, the result of the health supplements she'd taken before she started pretending to take them. Daniel entered the room and coldly rolled her over like a limp rag doll. He lifted her head, using her unconscious face to unlock the Face ID on her high-security corporate laptop. Leah shuddered, her hands clamping over her mouth to stifle a choked sob. He didn't love her. He was manipulating her body to access the top-secret financial data systems at her company. He photographed files, copied troves of client data, and sent it all through an encrypted chat window.
The camera even captured him casually making a video call to a stranger right beside his wife's comatose body, reporting his progress with an air of triumph. So Daniel wasn't just controlling her. He had turned her, a cybersecurity expert, into his universal key, allowing him to commit high-level data theft without leaving his own fingerprints. But the horrifying truth didn't end there. Trembling, Leah opened the video file from the basement, the place Daniel called his home gym. There were no treadmills or dumbbells. The basement of their happy home was in reality a miniature cybercrime hub. A virtual server connected to remote computers was processing and stealing financial data and private security records of high-end clients. Daniel Ward was not a health tech entrepreneur. He was a critical link, a high-level embedded hacker. He married Leah to exploit her career for access, used her unconscious state to erase his tracks, and, most ruthlessly, planned to make her the fall guy, the one who would take the blame if the operation were exposed. The final shock, the one that made the blood freeze in Leah's veins, was an audio file captured in the basement. Daniel's voice rang out, cold and cruel. "Everything's almost done. Once we pull the funds from this round, we'll make her disappear. A car accident or a drug overdose. Something clean, no traces." Leah's headphones fell from her hands. The world around her collapsed completely. He hadn't just used her. He had planned to eliminate her the moment she was no longer useful. The husband she had trusted with her entire life was in truth an executioner sharpening his knife beside her pillow every night. Fear now gave way to a raw, primal instinct for survival. She knew there was no turning back.
The moment she realized her life was hanging by a thread, Leah knew she had no more time for fear or sorrow. Her survival instinct surged stronger than ever. Frantically, she copied all the footage from the cameras and her handwritten notes onto a small portable hard drive. It was the only shield she had left to protect her life. Leah left the house with just a small bag. She didn't dare take much, fearing it would arouse suspicion if Daniel unexpectedly returned. Sitting in her car, her hands trembled as she turned the key, her eyes darting constantly to the rearview mirror, terrified she might see Daniel's car appear around the corner. Only when the engine roared to life and the tires rolled away from their familiar street did Leah dare to exhale, tears streaming down her face. Her destination was the home of Raina Cooper, her closest friend since college. Raina was the only person Leah trusted completely now. As soon as she saw Leah's disheveled, panicked state at her doorstep, Raina knew something was terribly wrong. After listening to Leah's stammered account of the horrifying truth and reviewing the footage on the hard drive, Raina's face turned pale. She gripped Leah's hand firmly and said decisively, "We can't call the local police, Leah. This is too big. It involves national cybersecurity. We have to call the FBI." Thanks to the swift connection and the gravity of the evidence, the FBI mobilized immediately. A coordinated raid was launched that very night. What followed played out like a breathless action film. Dozens of fully armed FBI agents stormed the couple's home. The sounds of doors being breached and shouted commands tore through the quiet night of the upscale neighborhood. When the secret basement door was smashed open, the stark truth was laid bare under the sweeping beams of flashlights. Agents seized a fully operational server system, an array of modern decryption devices, and more terrifyingly, unlabeled vials of sedative chemicals, the very drugs Daniel had been coldly injecting into the body of his wife night after night.
The data recovered at the scene matched perfectly with what Leah had provided, terabytes of stolen data from Leah's company and a long list of shady clients served by this criminal enterprise. As for Daniel Ward, he was completely unaware that his wife had escaped and struck back. When the FBI closed in, Daniel was at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport with a small suitcase in hand, ready to board a flight out of the city on a fake passport. He had planned to vanish after completing his final operation, leaving Leah behind to take the fall. The moment handcuffs were snapped on his wrists in the crowded airport, Daniel's usual gentle, respectable facade vanished. In its place was a cold, sharp gaze filled with hatred and disbelief. He couldn't believe that the woman he'd considered weak and easily manipulated had been the one to dismantle the entire shadow empire he had painstakingly built. Daniel Ward's arrest at the airport was far from the end. It was just the beginning of a media and legal storm that would rock the United States. The case was not simply about marital deceit. It was classified as a federal cybersecurity crime of the highest magnitude. The investigation dragged on for more than 11 grueling months. It was a period of extreme exhaustion for Leah. She not only had to face cold, methodical investigators, but also confront her own pain as each layer of truth was peeled back. Federal cybercrime units had stepped in, sifting through every shred of data from Daniel's basement of horrors. The findings, once made public, shocked the nation. The criminal organization Daniel was part of had successfully carried out attacks on more than 40 major corporations across the U.S., with estimated damages reaching into the billions of dollars. And, most painfully, in many of those operations, Leah's identity and access credentials had been used by Daniel as the perfect shield. In court, Leah was recognized as a victim of psychological and physical manipulation, bearing no criminal responsibility for the illegal acts. But legal exoneration could not instantly erase the scars on her heart. On the day of sentencing, the courtroom was packed. Leah sat in the witness section, her hands tightly clasped to keep them from trembling. She looked toward the defendant's table. Daniel Ward stood there, visibly thinner, yet his eyes still had that unnerving calm. He was no longer the model husband from before, but fully revealed as a cold-blooded, high-tech criminal. The elderly judge, his expression stern, delivered the most scathing words about Daniel's actions. The defendant did not just steal assets, he stole trust, health, and dignity from his spouse. Cruelty disguised as kindness is among the most despicable of crimes. The sentence was read in the dead silence of the courtroom. Daniel Ward was sentenced to 28 years in prison with no possibility of parole for the first 18 years. He was officially classified as an extremely dangerous federal cybercriminal. When the judge's gavel struck with a decisive crack, Leah closed her eyes and let out a long, shaky breath. It was as if the 1,000-pound weight that had crushed her chest for 2 years had finally been lifted. Along with Daniel's conviction, a portion of his network was also apprehended, though some of its ringleaders had managed to flee abroad. Daniel was escorted out of the courtroom. As he passed Leah, he paused for a split second, as if to say something, but was quickly pushed forward by the officers. Leah watched his retreating back, her eyes no longer filled with fear or hatred, only emptiness and a strange, fragile sense of relief. The hellish marriage had legally ended, but she knew the journey to heal her shattered soul was just beginning.
When the prison doors closed behind Daniel Ward, Leah also decided to close the old chapter of her life in Seattle. The city of perpetual rain now only held painful memories and deception. She sold the house, packed her few belongings, and moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico, a land drenched in sun and wind, where the red bronze earth and endless blue sky offered the sense of freedom she had long craved. But while physical wounds heal, the scars on the soul can be stubborn.
In her first months in the new land, Leah grappled with post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. Sleepless nights still haunted her. The slightest sound outside her window could jolt her awake, covered in cold sweat, her hands frantically searching for a means of self-defense. She had lost the most precious thing a person can have, trust. She doubted every kindness, was wary of every smile. Leah began attending therapy sessions. There she learned not to forget the past, but to accept it as a life lesson. More importantly, she relearned how to trust her own intuition, the very thing Daniel had worked so hard to crush. She told herself, "My intuition is my most loyal guardian. I was right to listen to it then, and I will never ignore it again." During those healing months, fate brought her to Caleb Rivers. He was an introverted architect, quiet and gentle, with warm eyes. Caleb wasn't smooth-talking. He lacked the polished exterior and sweet promises of a Daniel. He entered her life softly, respecting her boundaries absolutely. With Caleb, for the first time in years, Leah felt a sense of genuine safety, a quiet, steadfast safety. Yet one final shock still awaited Leah. One afternoon, she received a call from the FBI agent in charge of her old case. His voice on the other end of the line was heavy and hesitant, as if unsure whether to share this final truth. "Leah, we've just decrypted the last layer of security on Daniel Ward's server. There's something you need to know." Leah held her breath. "We found a list titled Assets for Elimination. Your name was at the very top, Leah. The plan was already set. If you hadn't pretended to take the pills, if you hadn't planted those cameras, and if you had delayed your escape by just 1 or 2 days, you would no longer be here." The phone slipped from Leah's hand and clattered onto the table. She sat in stunned silence, gazing out at the vast desert before her. A chill ran down her spine, but it quickly dissolved, replaced by an overwhelming awe at her own resilience. So the line between life and death had been that thin. She hadn't just escaped a toxic marriage, she had literally snatched her own life back from the jaws of death. The thought made Leah break down in tears. She had survived. She had won. The story of Leah Morgan and Daniel Ward has concluded, but its echoes will likely linger in our minds for a long time. It serves as a stark and powerful wake-up call, tearing away the soft velvety curtain we often drape over the concept of a happy home. We often think of domestic violence as fiery slaps, deafening shouts, or clear bruises on the skin. But this story reveals another, more terrifying and insidious form of domestic violence, control disguised as kindness. Daniel never hit Leah. He slowly killed her with glasses of warm water, with inquiries about her health, and with meticulous attention to her every hour of sleep. This is the most dangerous kind of violence, the violence of manipulation, gaslighting. When someone begins to control your body, dictates what you eat, what pills you take, how many hours of sleep you get, and makes you doubt your own memory, that is not love. Those are glaring red flags, signs of extreme danger. Never blame yourself for trusting the wrong person. Leah was not wrong for loving and trusting Daniel. The one at fault is the person who exploited that trust for a dark agenda. But please remember this, trust is precious. Give it to those who deserve it, but never silence your own intuition. Intuition is the silent guardian nature gave each of us. When something feels off, when little details don't add up, don't ignore that feeling. Being alert, having the courage to speak up, and seeking help when needed are crucial. Sometimes they are the only actions that can pull you back from lurking dangers. True happiness doesn't come solely from the luck of finding the right person to lean on. the most lasting happiness comes from having the strength and wisdom to love and protect yourself, no matter the circumstances. If Leah's journey of escaping her gilded cage has touched your heart today, or helped you recognize something valuable for your own life, please leave a comment sharing your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications for Voices of Rubie. Here, we don't just tell stories, we amplify voices of truth, compassion, and life's deepest lessons. We look forward to seeing you in our next stories where every fate holds an invaluable lesson. Thank you, and may you always find peace and happiness.